And welcome back to more of the Real Money Show, and welcoming our listeners at News Talk 770 in Calgary as well. On the show now, Gerald Celente, publisher of the TrendsJournal. He was once in the New York Post that if Nostradamus was alive today, he would have trouble keeping up with Mr. Celente. Welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Hi, Gerald. This is Jeremy speaking from
Hello,
Guildhall.
Jeremy.
Hey, great to talk to you again. I wanted to start off right away. We actually were talking at the top of the show, always looking at what we call retail versus reality in terms of the stock market's doing great and the press is all over that. But I've got a list here as long as my arm with retail sales being down. So I wanted if you could expand on that a little bit, as one of the articles you talk about in one of the most recent Trends journals is about the big box stores.
Well, retail sales are down for a number of reasons. For example, on Friday, the job numbers came out in the United States, and they created about 200,000 jobs. And now we're even for all the jobs lost that have been lost since the panic of '08 hit, the Great Recession. So they made up those lost jobs, but how about the population grew by over 7% during the same time? So what you have is a labor force participation rate that at its lowest levels in 36 years. But it's different even when you look back, because when you look back and you look at what laborers were participating in, they weren't participating in 100,000 of those new jobs that were created that are health aid services, that are, I love the term, hospitality sectors. Mm-hmm. That means you make beds in hotels, and you could be a waiter or a bartender. And you look at the other jobs, and they're in the lower end of retail and service sector. Only 10,000 or so created in manufacturing, and about another 8,000 or 10,000 in construction. So going back to retail, you have a third of the millennial generation are now living with their parents because they can't afford to be out on their own. The real estate market that, they're all talking about over here, it's picked up. Well, 40% of first-time home buyers used to be people under 35, and that's very important for first-time home buyers. Now it's around 20%, 25%. Goes back to retail. Obamacare. We are being forced to buy health insurance from private insurance companies. This is not nationalized health care. We're being forced to buy health care from private companies. So now you're being forced to pay that. So when you add it all together, people have less money to go into retail. So the money that's not going into the cash register is going into rising taxes across the board, whether they're school taxes and property taxes. If you own real estate, you're forced to pay those. You have the Obama tax now. And then you have a real situation where people are earning a lot less money. So, for example, when we go back to the big box stores, look at Walmart's sales numbers coming out. Wow, they're lower than anticipated. You know, when I was a kid, there was no such thing as a dollar store. It didn't exist. But now they're all over the country, and you know who their prime consumer is? People making $25,000 or less. So they got a lot of competition. They have a lot of population to draw from, because the average salary in the United States now is under $28,000 a year. So the big box stores are looking at a much smaller audience of people that used to be clients or customers, I should say. So you see a shrinkage throughout the boards.
It's curious. Why do you think that that's not showing up in the stock market?
Well, it's not curious at all, because the stock market is enriching the 1%. Mm-hmm. And that's where the dough is going. Look at your merger and acquisition numbers. You know, they're back to almost, pre-recession levels. You could borrow money for almost nothing if you're one of the white shoe boys. Mm-hmm. If you're in the merger and acquisition business, if you're in the hedge fund or venture capital, how dare I? So when you look at what's going on, the money is only going to the 1%. You pick up the Wall Street Journal. America's income has increased, household income. And they have it right there. The wealthier got wealthier. So when the stock market is only enriching the rich, and this is, by the way, it's not only in the United States. It's in Europe. It's in China. It's the money's going to the top. And so what we're looking at, when you're looking again behind the numbers and the 1%, all right, Mario Draghi, the former Goldman Sachs guy that was running the European division, a Goldman Sachs member or gang member, that's now the head of the ECB for several years. They just instituted, you can't make this up, of course, and they take it as though this is, this makes sense. They now have negative interest rates.
I know.
All right, who is that enriching? It's enriching the banks and the speculators that borrow that money at that low number. Now let's go back to the average person, whether it's in Europe or the U.S. Once upon a time, when I was a young kid, they used to have this thing called savings accounts. I know it sounds like a foreign concept. People used to put money away, extra money, into the banks, into their saving account. And they used to get an interest return that was greater than inflation by a sizable number. And so in the old days, they'd put money away all their lives, and then when they got to retirement age, they would have what they used to call a nest egg. Now you put your money in the bank, particularly now if you're in Europe, and in the good old USSA, you get nothing back. So where's the money going? Why the equity market's going up? That's the place to put the dough, because you got no place else to put it.
Gerald, what's your thoughts on these fines that are being levied on the banks? Extreme, 2 million, 3 billion, incredible amounts of money.
It's chicken feed compared to the money that they make. And what it is, look, let's suppose either one of you guys, Jeremy or Paul, you go out and you pull a heist. You rob a bank. What will they do if they catch you?
Jail.
First, they'll beat the hell out of you if they catch you. Then you'll go to jail. But when the banks rob us, hey, just pay a fine. We'll do a little headline. We'll get some of your dough. We need it in the government. And you go on and you keep committing your acts. And you know what we'll call it? We'll call it a misstep. How's that?
So what do you think the trend is for that? Do you think we're going to continue to see more fines? I mean, I think I do see little bits and pieces here, especially in Europe, where there's a bit of a crackdown happening. Do you think that there's a trend towards that, or do you think we're continue on this line where they just get slap on the wrist fees?
No, that's for the little people to look at, so they pretend that they're doing something. As you're looking at what in Greece, 30% unemployment. 25, 27 in Spain. You have people. You're looking at a decline of the GDP over the last few years of over 25%. The people have lost everything, and then they come out. We're cracking down on these banks for their misdeeds. I forgot misdeeds, misrepresentation, and misstatements.
Did you see the thing on Italy, what they put in the GDP, by the way? Prostitution, gambling?
Yeah, they did that. They're doing it in the UK, too, now.
It's crazy.
Oh, yeah, they're doing it in a number of countries to boost up the GDP. And, and if they should also put in there political corruption, man. Then they'd really boost that GDP number.
Where do you see, for investors, which hard assets would you recommend? Or not so much recommend, your opinion?
Again, I do not give financial advice. I want to make that 100% clear. But when you look at where the future is going, I mean, they're going to keep these interest rates now down. This is unprecedented. So as long as you have these low interest rates, real estate's going to do fine in different sectors. particularly the wealthy ones. Now, I believe. And you're going to see the equity markets until the Ponzi scheme stops. But, you can't fight the Fed. They keep coming up with new games like negative interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
Quantitative easing. Who made that one up? People say to me, I was wrong in my forecasts that, we go back into a panic. Yeah, you're right. I was wrong. How the hell did I know that they're going to make up a thing called quantitative easing? How did I know that the Federal Reserve was going to dump $17 trillion into banks around the world and businesses? How did I know they'd make up a thing called too big to fail and keep it going?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't, and how did I know they're going to come up with negative interest rates? Oh, and here's the baloney with this, too, by the way. They're worried about deflation. All right, let's see how this works. Okay, let's go back to Greece. The economy's declined 25% over the last few years. 30% unemployment, probably higher, but that's like official, around 27, 30. They're dumping now all these VAT taxes and other taxes. So now you're making a lot less. They rob you of your pensions and benefits. They're overtaxing you. All right, the cost of things are going down. Duh. Meanwhile, the prices of commodities, such as food, fuel, they keep going up. It keeps costing you more to live. Yes, you have a deflation in relative to the decline of the economy. But this is not deflation. Not when you have all these other costs that are being dumped on top of you, like taxes. We're not going to add those in, though, because we're the government. Not like food. You listen to everything coming out of the food industry, which is a terrible name to associate with food,
mm-hmm.
and prices are going through the roof. You're looking at profits declining quite dramatically in a lot of areas because of rising food prices. So it's not deflation. What it is, it's a rebalance of the economy the way it's supposed to be when things go down. Line number 2, coming out of the European Union, that they have a 2% inflation rate number for the European Union to grow into. That's a big lie. The 2% number that came out when they came out with the euro was that a country was not to exceed that. Not that that was a mark or a hit. So now they're putting it in our heads that, hey, inflation's good. Yeah, it's good if you're one of the white shoe boys, a banker, the hedge funds, the private equity groups, and all of the others, but not good for the average citizen, which they could care less about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the average citizen, especially in Europe, and then as well